some massive news that dropped not that long ago, actually, less than a few hours ago, is that Prada has finally released the value figure that they are considering acquiring Versace for. Of course, they are to acquire Versace. I don't think everything has gone through yet. We'll read about it via BOF, which obviously is a great source when it comes to the business side of fashion. But as you can see here, Prada Group is going to acquire Versace for 1.25 billion euros, which is absolutely insane. They also plan to invest an additional 250 million euros in relaunching Versace, which has struggled to keep up with bigger heritage brands since selling to Michael Kors' parent, Capri Holdings, in 2018. And this is very interesting because I've seen a lot of the discourse online just really being around what is going to happen aesthetically to Versace. Is Versace going to follow in the footsteps of Prada? Because as most of you watching will know, Prada is one of the few, groups that has actually seen some significant financial gains over the past year when a lot of other luxury conglomerates have been struggling. Prada, Miu Miu, they've had amazing performance. So are they going to, take that same formula and try to turn Versace into this like Miu Miu-esque short skirts with ballet flat sort of aesthetic, or are they going to find an interesting way to modernize what Versace has done for so long with the prints, different use of silk fabrics and stuff like that? So all of that needs to be seen, because them saying that they need an additional 250 million euros to relaunch Versace, which to me is an insane investment. That is so much money. I'm very curious as to exactly what they are using that money for. Like, what is that money going towards? But let's read on. Prada Group has agreed to acquire Versace from Capri Holdings for 1.25 billion euros, the company said in a statement on Thursday, which is today, of course. Prada is borrowing an additional 250 million euros to invest in relaunching Versace, which turned loss-making last year as it struggles to keep up with bigger heritage brands amid a global downturn in luxury sales. And this is very interesting because, once again, I remember in the first stream that we did about this whole Prada and Versace thing, I said that it seems like a massive bargain for Versace to be bought for anything less than 2 billion, to be honest. 1.25 billion in theory seems like a bargain because of how big Versace is and how much revenue Versace makes, but considering how much of a loss they've made also, that might be why they were able to negotiate a fair deal in terms of it being worth less than I would have thought Versace was worth, to be honest, because normally they have these multiples where they take how much revenue and they multiply it by a certain number of factors. That also depends on like the industry and how much growth potential is seen in that industry. But Versace makes close to like 1 billion in revenue, so it's not even a multiple of 2. It's not even a multiple of 1.5 in this case, which is what was surprising to me. But considering the losses, that might be a big reason why they aren't worth as much as they should be in a way. There might be something interesting here with the mumification of the garish, almost vulgar gaudiness of Versace as it becomes chic to mock elite wealth, doing it in an ironic way. That would, I guess, be very interesting. You would have to see, though. Why is Prada doing this? Versace is a brand that is affordable, since you can get all of it for at least 50% off at the end of the season. Yeah, but that's not good for the company. That's good for the customer, but that's not necessarily good for the company because they're losing money by always having to have sales because things aren't selling. So I guess Prada just sees a lot of growth potential there, and they think that they have the expertise and the know-how to turn around their fortunes and make loads of money by fixing the issues that Versace has. But anyway, let's read on. The deal is going ahead despite a global market rout sparked by Trump's trade war, which obviously is something we're going to talk about later, which risks hammering demand for high-end products, in addition to clouding the outlook for fashion's global supply chain. Shares in Michael Kors and Versace parent Capri tumbled 36% in a week before partially recovering Wednesday after Trump announced a 90-day pause on the heftiest tariff imports from all countries except China. In spite of a volatile market that is likely to pinch both strong brands like Prada and struggling rivals like Versace, Prada Group appears to have decided it couldn't pass up the chance to add one of Italy's most famous brands to its stable. Turning around Versace will be a challenge for the group controlled by Miuccia Prada and her husband, Patrizio Bertelli, but could provide a new avenue for growth beyond its flagship Prada brand and Miu Miu sister label, as well as helping to fend off consolidation by French groups LVMH and Kering. With its highly recognizable aesthetic, the brand constitutes a strongly complementary addition to Prada's group's portfolio and displays significant untapped growth, potential leveraging multiple value creation levers. And this is exactly what I was alluding to, this statement here, where I was saying, really, all it looks like is Prada just seeing that there's a massive growth potential there, and therefore understanding that so long as they can, do their business correctly, there's a lot of money to be made via Versace because they're doing that badly, to be honest. So yeah, it was bought by Capri for 2.2 billion. Now it's being sold. It's not being sold for $1.25 billion, by the way. It's being sold for 1.25 billion euros. So let me see how it's still a loss, but not as bad as it looks. So that is $1.38 billion. So yeah, still a loss, but not exactly that much of a loss. But yeah, they didn't do well, and it was a horrible investment on their part, for sure. And I think they'll talk about it here. Versace's estimated revenues fell 19% to $810 million. Yeah, so this is what I was talking about. So their yearly revenues are $810 million, but they selling to Prada Group for $1.38 billion. So that's not even a multiple of 2. That's quite insane. That is quite insane. But reading on, in the fiscal year through March, Capri said, that's roughly in line with the size of business when the American group acquired it for $2.1 billion in 2018. The brand is hoping to break even by March 2026 after operating margins swung to a high single-digit loss over the past year. I think them thinking that they can break even by March 2026 doesn't make much sense to me, to be fair. That seems like wishful thinking. Because first of all, Prada Group has said that they're borrowing an extra 250 million euros just to launch it. So them breaking even would mean, first of all, they have to make up for the losses that the company is already making, and they need to recoup that 250 million initial investment that they're investing back. And they're saying by March 2026, in a year's time. That doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. Companies don't recoup that amount of money that quickly. If they said in 2 or 3 years, I think that would make more sense. But yeah, hoping to break even by March 2026, that's some serious wishful thinking. That means that they think it's going to be a cash cow. They really think they're going to make tons and tons of money, but that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But reading on, last month, Versace named a new artistic director hired from Prada's Miu Miu label, Dario Vitale, to help revamp its collections. We covered that in a previous stream. If you guys are interested, Vitale is a seasoned operator whose fresh creative vision could revive interest in a brand that's been designed by co-founder Donatella Versace since 1997. Also a very interesting point, because a reason why we are speculating whether the aesthetic of Versace will very much look like what we associate with Miu Miu is because Dario Vitale came from Miu Miu, and is one of the big reasons why Miu Miu had so much success and continues to have success in recent times. And so considering that's his understanding of things, that's the aesthetic that he has seen work on a business level. Is he going to do that for Versace, or do they have a different plan? It's always fun to speculate, but let's read on. On the other hand, industry sources say the designer's exit from the Prada Group was fraught, and his appointment could raise concerns among executives that his Versace could cannibalize sales of fast-growing Miu Miu, that would only happen if his aesthetic is very similar to Miu Miu. But so long as it isn't similar, it wouldn't really cannibalize the sales of Miu Miu, to be honest. The deal will test recent efforts to financialize and professionalize Prada's governance and operations. Over the past 5 years, the Milan-based firm has sought to accelerate its succession plans, bringing in a new CEO, CFO, and deputy chairman as founders Prada and Bertelli relinquish their co-CEO titles. That also is happening because Miuccia Prada is slowly stepping down, and you can see that by a lot of decisions she's made recently. That was literally why Ras Simmons was hired. I remember around the time that Ras Simmons was a co-creative director of Prada. A lot of people were speculating that is this sort of Mita Prada's exit plan from fashion, where she's going to kind of set off into the sunset and stop designing and just kind of, relax a bit more. So we've always known that there was an understanding that over time they were going to bring new CEOs in, new CFOs in, new creative directors in, and that is kind of just happening. So that's nothing new. We kind of already knew that. Okay, I'm even looking at the article that I think they're alluding to that also. Let's see what they've said in the article. Star designer Ras Simmons joined the company as co-creative director of the Prada brand in 2020. The organization is ready and well positioned to write a new page in Versace's history, Bertelli said in a statement. Prada Group's sales have continued to grow despite a downturn in the overall luxury market. Revenues rose 15% to 5.4 billion euros last year, which is something I mentioned earlier. Expansion was driven principally by Miu Miu, whose retail sales have nearly doubled. At Capri, investors welcomed recent months' reports that the group aimed to shed its Versace and Jimmy Choo businesses in order to focus on turning around Michael Kors after a plan to sell the group to Coach owner Tapestry fell through last year. That was also a big business story in fashion not too long ago where, that sale was blocked and it has really affected Capri's ability to do any meaningful business. And that's why also when this conversation around Prada acquiring Versace came in, a lot of people were speculating if that deal would be blocked, considering the favorable price also. So it's very interesting that that ended up not being blocked. But reading on, the US antitrust authorities blocked the previous deal, saying it would hurt consumers by making the country's handbag market insufficiently competitive. Yeah, so they talked about that. Prada negotiated further discounts to Versace's price amid the current market rout, 1.25 billion euros. Capri is selling Versace for far less than the $2.1 billion it paid for the brand in 2018, but the opportunity to reduce its net debt of $1.12 billion, as well as getting a loss-making unit off its balance sheet, likely enticed the board to accept a deal. A very desperate deal, if I must say so myself, but they have to do what they have to do. In February, Fitch downgraded its rating for Capri's debt to BBB, just a notch above what would be considered junk bonds. So that's the story. That's kind of the update in terms of Prada Group acquiring Versace for 1.25 billion euros. I would like to know what you guys think. What do you guys think? Do you think that the aesthetic of Versace, considering that Dario Vitale is there, is going to be similar to Miu Miu? And do you think that will affect Miu Miu sales? I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. Miu Miu has been thinking about entering Prada into the Italian stock market for a long time. So I wonder if they are finally going to do it and if that's part of the deal with Donatella. That might be part of it, to be honest. Now that you've raised that point, that definitely might be part of it for sure. Because they talk about what Prada Group is trying to avoid is a takeover by an LVMH or by a Kering, because obviously they're way bigger. So they are trying to legitimize their business by acquiring other businesses, growing in that sense. And I guess entering the stock exchange will help with that, to be very honest. So that's definitely something I can see happening in the near future. I don't think Dario will change the Versace aesthetic to Miu Miu, but he will implement the Miu Miu playbook in how he will run the design studio. That's definitely a fair point. Definitely a fair point. Oh, Anglerfish is saying it's a pipe dream. I think you're talking about Prada saying that they are hoping to break even by March 2026. Yeah, I think it's wishful thinking. I think it would actually be sensational if they do. If they are able to pull that off and break even by March 2026, it means that Prada's business models need to be studied by every conglomerate in fashion because they already have seen crazy economic growth at a time when other conglomerates have been struggling. So that would just mean that they just know what they're doing so well that they're doing things that other conglomerates have been struggling to do. So at that point, it's like, I can imagine what LVMH is going to do at that point. They're going to headhunt all the CEOs, all the Prada Group brands, and offer them money that they can't refuse so that they can, have a bit of that sauce. That's what always happens. All the massive companies just come in with millions. Like, we will hire you. We'll give you a $10 million bonus if you join LVMH. That literally is always what happens. I think Prada buying Versace is a good business decision. It will bring back Versace to Italian ownership. That perception alone is gold. Good point also. That's a very good point. What's the thing with all these Italian brands getting bought out? Valentino, Gucci, Versace, Bottega, Bulgari. Is it a conspiracy? I don't think so. I just think that a lot of them don't have the infrastructure to continue growing independently. And when they are owned by bigger companies like Capri Holdings or whatever, they aren't really a big focus, because Capri, we know that their main focus is Michael Kors and building Michael Kors' business. They don't really care too much about Versace, which is why they sold it at a price that really doesn't make a lot of sense, other than the fact that they just kind of wanted to recoup money to get rid of their debt. But apart from that, that's kind of been the main focus for them. So it's also the companies that acquire a lot of these Italian brands, they don't actually care too much about the brands. It's not the main focus of a lot of these companies. But yeah, all the other sales though happened a while ago. Like Gucci happened a while ago, Bottega. So all of this stuff is not like super, super recent. But yeah, guys. Anyway, that's the story on Versace and Prada. This YouTube channel runs on your support. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon. You'll gain access to exclusive content that includes everything from my Patreon podcast, where I give a behind-the-scenes insight into the fashion industry, as well as a fashion book club, where I review my favorite fashion books. You can also check out my fashion ebook, which highlights the best fashion journalists to follow, definitions of common fashion terminology, and how to determine what a good source of fashion information is. The links to everything are in the description below.